Before the illustrious world of Marvel and DC, there was Spawn. The film featured the first African-American actor portraying a major hero. At the time of its release in 1997, it wasn't a respected genre. Yeah, the whole superhero comic stuff wasn't as popular back then. In this video, we'll talk about whether the wonderful writing team that Spawn movies have conjured up and why it was ahead of its time. So let's get right into it. First up, let's talk about the new writers joining the group. The dialogue and writing of any movie or show are the heart of entertainment. Before CGI and dramatic scenes, it was the writing that carried the shows. And now, even with all the advancements in film, it's still the same thing that carries most of the weight. One can always argue on this all day long, but after all is said and done, no art can be delivered or explained without words. Spawn's production seems to understand that factor well, and this is why. It seems that the Spawn movie has assembled a rather brilliant team of writers. One of the minds behind the popular Joker is involved, and another who's penning the upcoming controversial Captain America: New World Order. And it seems like they're bringing two entirely different minds to the team, which brings up the question, what theme will the movie follow considering the diverse range? Spawn, created by Todd McFarlane, has a pretty gruesome origin story if we say so ourselves. If our word falls short, let us detail it a bit to explain our point. Spawn was burned to death in what was a betrayal by his comrades who were special agents. His original name is Albert Francis Simmons, and he was given a chance to return to Earth following his death. But there was a catch. His return was at the expense of his memories, body, and a jump of 5 years. His superhuman powers, along with his haunting demonic look, are gifted to him by hell, and working as an assassin in his life prior to his horrible death just elevates his ability as a marksman. Coming up, how will this help the reboot film? Spawn first ran as a comic book, much like the comics we're more familiar with now, and then it was transformed into a feature film in 1997. And that wasn't all, it was also an Emmy-winning animated series from 1997 and 1999. The reboot film for Spawn has been in the works for many years, with Jamie Foxx taking the lead role. He isn't new, but a seasoned player. He appeared as Electro in the Spider-Man franchise. The creator, McFarlane, has been a dedicated man to the upcoming film and nothing else. He's even writing a script for the project. But now he has help from Oscar-nominated team member Scott Silver and from the successful Malcolm Spellman, who also co-wrote The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But here's where it's getting alarming. They've been joined by a novice, Matt Mixon, who's a decorated writer, but for documentaries. Being joined by A-list actors, producers, and writers have encouraged the creator to aim for an A-list director. He referred to it as keeping the momentum going. Anywho, from the original Spawn description we gave you, you can guess that while having heroes might have been common, having villains wasn't. Now we simp over Loki, Deadpool, and Lucifer, while they continue to fascinate us. In other words, we're tired of the morally correct superheroes. Our appetite for those without morals has grown. Up next, what expectations does this reboot have to live up to since it was already ahead of its time? It's said by critics that if the original Spawn movie hadn't been PG-13, it would have been much better. McFarlane listened and cleared up that the reboot would be rated R, aligning with Silver's involvement. The new writer said that the reboot is closer to being made than ever, and it's a crazy good combination to say the least, with them bringing a huge variety of talent to the table. If anything, it makes us wonder what theme would follow. Michael J. White, who played one of the first black superheroes, hasn't ever been shy about his feelings regarding the original. He stated that people who already understood what the hell was going on knew of Spawn already, but it didn't help those who didn't know of it. Well, he isn't wrong. He does speak of a drastically different time. Let us ask you, when was the last time you were surprised by the release of a new superhero movie? Surely not in the last couple decades. It wasn't a major genre in the 90s, so no one wanted to gamble their money. But those smaller companies who did are now living their life in gold coins. Spawn was loved by those who were hardcore comic fans, so why does it matter if the wider audience didn't adore it? Following that, why is it that the movies were considered bad? If you think about some of the CGI scenes that are bad now, trust us, they were much worse just a decade ago. Add the confusing story to the mix, and it's just not a good mix. Well, the idea was great, and it was ahead of its time, but it remains to be one of the most garish, strained, and pitiful superhero movies of all time. But again, with criticism comes a round of applause. It defines an era in Hollywood where they were trying to figure out how edgy comic book films were during a pretty tough time for the genre. Such movies didn't make it to the box office at all. If anything, Spawn was way ahead of its time. But again, it could have been better, but it could have been worse too. The cultural aspect is all good, but it's just not a good movie. Retaining a dark movie's image by making it PG-13 was definitely the biggest mistake. And the movie felt childish, silly, and cringy, especially when you think about how it was meant to be for grown-ups with mature concepts. Spawn seemed like one of those films where many of the creative decisions were supported supported by ill advisors. Sheen's goofy hair, Leguizamo's horrible over-the-top performance, it just didn't sit well together. The movie had tired side characters and lame jokes that couldn't help more than a rush of air through the nose. And the new writers to Reboot definitely add what was missing from the original, non-dopey dialogues. And while they did the best they could with the resources available, there wasn't much to gape over then as a cool cape. Even those living decades ago weren't impressed with the CGI, so we obviously don't have anything good to say about it. Let's move on to the impact of this film series. Todd McFarlane knew of his love for comics as a teenager in Calgary, when skipping channels on TV brought him to someone holding up a comic, and it wasn't just something common, it was Uncanny X-Men, which was his favorite. He described the guy holding it looked like John Byrne, who was the artist for the comic, and this left the young man astounded. This was when everything changed for him. If someone from Calgary could go to a New York firm that does comic work, he could do it too, having come from the same city. Unlike Marvel, which keeps the profits for itself, Image Comics earned plaudits for allowing creators to be more involved in the profits of their hit comics. Despite Spawn's many shortcomings, it landed in second place on its opening weekend. It pulled in $88 million worldwide, and its production cost $40 million, which meant no sequels. But the movie was notable for its feature of a black superhero that was as serious as they come. The Meteor Man and Blank Man were more comedic, which was associated with such characters. How many times have you seen a black sidekick that humors other characters in the movie? It's debatable, but Spawn helped open the doors for similar projects, like the success of Blade, which came out the following year. It had the same gritty comic book character made for the big screen. In addition to that, let's talk about what went wrong and what could go right with the reboot. Deep worked on the movie and continued to bash it, as did others, but he did something different from the rest. He gave a reason for why the plot fell flat. In his DVD commentary for the film, he said that he's one to blame for the shortcomings. According to White, there was a version of the film that has the entire story intact. A man who loved his wife and decided to leave everything he does for a living that was questionable to his soul. So what went wrong? He opened up that in the final version, the backstory was removed, so we never really saw the life Simmons was trying to get back to. The director added so many special effects that the story got lost and the audience lost empathy for the main character. In any way you see it, it was a story that started something new, even when done poorly. And that's a wrap for this video. What do you think of Spawn's new additions? And what were the best and worst parts of it for you? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you at the next one.